I think everybody's heard of the movement called Me Too that started back in the winter of 2017 to 2018 that was centered around trying to force companies and institutions to be accountable for sexual harassment, especially against women. And one of the main figures in that saga was, of course, Harvey Weinstein, who, he's a huge Hollywood producer, and Weinstein's company has been responsible for some of the most amazing movies in the history of cinema. And at the same time, it would appear that Harvey Weinstein was a sexual predator of, very high frequency. He used to basically use his position in order to force young ingenues into, compromising positions or to perform sex acts on him. So I certainly am not going to be making this video in order to defend Harvey Weinstein as a person. But what happened was that you can see this is from the Harvard Crimson, and it's related to the story. It's their reaction to this story from Boston.com, saying that Harvard's first black faculty deans are let go amid an uproar over Harvey Weinstein defense. So this is Ronald Sullivan. He's a lawyer at Harvard, and he's basically a law professor, I believe, at Harvard, and he's going to be part of Weinstein's defense team. And he said that he would join it in January, and they started this campaign to have him removed as the dean, apparently, of this Winthrop House, which is a residential college for undergraduate students. So these are kids who go to the greatest university in America. Harvard sits probably at the very, very top. You have other colleges like, of course, Yale and Dartmouth and Columbia. Stanford certainly deserves to be up there. Nobody really, in terms of branding, comes close to Harvard, however. And they're basically trying to chase these people away and tear down their lives because Sullivan has decided, well, I'm going to be part of the defense team for one of the most notorious defendants in modern history. So it says here, Harvard said Saturday that a law professor who is representing Harvey Weinstein would not continue as faculty dean of an undergraduate house, bowing to months of pressure from students who had demanded the removal of the professor from his role as dean. The professor, Ronald Sullivan, and his wife, Stephanie Robinson, who is a lecturer at the law school, have been the faculty deans of Winthrop House, one of Harvard's residential colleges for undergraduate students, since 2009. They were the first African-American faculty deans in Harvard's history. But when Sullivan joined the defense team of Weinstein, the Hollywood producer, in late January, many students expressed dismay, saying that his decision to represent a person accused of abusing women made Sullivan no longer qualified to serve in a role of support and mentorship to students. Weinstein is scheduled for trial in June in New York on rape and related charges. As the protests continued, with graffiti aimed at Sullivan showing up on the door of a university building, Harvard administrators said they would do what they called a, quote, climate review of Winthrop's house. In recent weeks, tensions have escalated as students held a sit-in and as a clash between one of the students leading the protests and two Winthrop House staff members who were seen as supporting Sullivan sparked a lawsuit. So this shows really the divide in America between activists and the rest of the people, because if these are staff members, it's likely they're not making a ginormous amount of money. Depends what they were doing, obviously. Maybe they could be office staff, they could be, of course, custodial staff, but when you see people who, they're just trying to do their jobs and they're working for their boss and they're being harassed by, these protesters, you really have to start to wonder exactly who's in charge. On Saturday, the dean of Harvard College, Rakesh Khurana, sent an email to students and staff members at Winthrop House saying that Sullivan and Robinson would not continue as faculty deans after their terms end June 30th. Khurana said in his email that the decision was informed by a number of considerations. Over the last few weeks, students and staff have continued to communicate concerns about the climate in Winthrop House to the college. He wrote, the concerns expressed have been serious and numerous. The actions that have been taken to improve the climate have been ineffective, and the noticeable lack of faculty dean presence during critical moments has further deteriorated the climate in the House. I have concluded that the situation in the House is untenable. Neither Sullivan nor Robinson could immediately be reached for comment Saturday. The decision not to renew their appointments as faculty deans does not affect their appointments at the law school, where Sullivan is the Jesse Klimenko Clinical Professor of Law and Director of the Criminal Justice Institute. So, what we are seeing is basically Harvard, which is the most powerful university in America. Arguably. Maybe there's some other ones that are close to it. Of course, there's, MIT is probably pretty close. Harvard is giving in to the mob. And a similar issue happened a couple years ago when Nicholas Christakis was a professor at Yale. I think he's still a professor there, but he was also in a similar position as the head of a residency hall. And the students basically bullied him into giving up that position along with his wife because they opposed this new protocol that prevented you from having Halloween costumes that were racial appropriation. I think it's So, or cultural appropriation. They were against this rule that was being proposed to prevent kids from wearing these costumes that were cultural appropriation. Now let's look at some of the reaction here. And it's basically the same story, but this is from the Harvard Crimson, which is the student newspaper at Harvard. And you see some of these people who are claiming that, this is a good thing. And this person even says, going forward, it would be a prerequisite for the position that all candidates swear fealty to the mob before even being considered. And then somebody replies saying, ironically, it's Sullivan who unilaterally changed hiring rules for House staff in an apparent effort to ensure all new hires were on his side. So there could be negative issues with, Sullivan as to why he shouldn't be in there. Of course, I'm not going to comment on whether he was a good House administrator or not. Then somebody says, thank you, Crimson, for excellent reporting that forced Khurana's hand. I'm relieved to see the college abandon their cowardice and finally say enough is enough. And then somebody objects to this. And, people are going back and forth. This is not, so somebody says it's a white industrial complex. I'm going to try to link to this, but there's so many comments here where people are going back and forth. And yeah, it's good that their comment section is open so people can debate this, but it's clearly, it's a sign that people weren't necessarily in unison about this decision. And then it says here, I hope that the editors and writers of the Crimson don't have plans to get jobs in journalism with this sorry display of misguided activism that has passed off as reporting. Every reputable news organization has written editorials denouncing this witch hunt, yet the Crimson editors push on. So yeah, this is pretty crazy. And the reason that I'm highlighting this story, which I saw somebody else share, is that lately there's been a lot of steam being put off by this idea from Bernie Sanders to restore voting rights for felons. And I would like to say that before we even talk about voting rights, what about the right to a competent defense? What about the right to being represented when you're on trial? I get it that there are a lot of criminals out there, and Harvey Weinstein, it would appear, would be one of them. Of course, he hasn't been tried yet, but he's going on. I think his trial might even be in progress already. There's a lot of criminals out there that they seem like horrible, disgusting people based on reports that you hear in the media. But the media is not the media isn't a part of the criminal justice system. The media can only report on alleged crimes, and then when those people are standing trial, the people who are suspected of the crimes, they can report on the events in court. They can also publish commentary on it. They can publish opinions on whether a verdict is correct or incorrect, or whether a law is correct or incorrect. That is the function of the media. But the media can't be the judge, jury, and executioner in the public eye. And when you have somebody like a Harvard law professor, even somebody, maybe he's not the greatest guy, this Ronald Sullivan, and they went for the first and foremost thing they said was first black faculty dean. It shouldn't matter that he's the black faculty dean. The fact is that this is a law professor. He's a criminal justice professor. And he's defending somebody like Harvey Weinstein, who is a very prominent defendant, somebody accused of very heinous crimes. And it makes perfect sense that a criminal law professor would volunteer to be a defense attorney for a defendant like that. Even the worst defendants, the people accused of the worst crimes in this system in the United States, have traditionally been entitled to a defense. Not traditionally, they are by law entitled to a defense. And I wanted to say this: that this is a famous serial killer from here. I live in Ohio. I actually live pretty close to where this guy lives, Anthony Sowell, who's one of the most notorious serial killers in the history of Ohio. And the guy here in the foreground is his defense attorney. And I actually used to go to the same gym as him. And it was pretty weird seeing that, I used to recognize him. I was like, where do I remember this guy from? Well, he was the defense attorney for one of the worst serial killers in the country. And I don't even know if they mentioned his name here, which, I guess I'm not really going to, I don't know the guy personally. I just know that I used to go to the same gym as him. But Anthony Sowell, he did some horrible, horrible things. He used to strangle these women after he got them high on crack and took them to his decrepit house in it's called Imperial Avenue. It's on the east side here. And he would just murder them and bury their bodies. Often they were already crack addicted, or they were, they came from abusive homes themselves. And Sowell had once been, when he was in the Marine Corps back in the 80s, he'd once been a husband, and he'd been, a dad, I think, a couple times. And then he went to prison for rape back then. Gets out of prison, comes back here. For many years, people, he stayed under the radar. He worked like really low hanging jobs or whatever. He got a defense. I don't know if it was the best defense. I don't know if even the best defense in the country would have gotten him cleared, but he still got a criminal defense. And that lawyer that he had, it's not as if people treated him differently because he happened to be Anthony Sowell's lawyer. Somebody has to do it. I actually got into an argument with somebody once who was talking a lot about how, of course, a certain very popular politician among some, whether he was guilty or not guilty. I said, the fact is that you are a lawyer and you are a liar too. And being a defense lawyer, don't you think it's very odd for you to, this was during the whole Kavanaugh hearings thing. Don't you think it's a little odd for you to be passing judgment on a defendant, so supposedly defendant Brett Kavanaugh, when you yourself defend these clients who often you know for sure that they're guilty and that they've committed some of these horrible acts of rape and sexual assault and everything? And he basically blew it off and he said, well, that's just my job. It has nothing to do with it. No. If you believe in a justice system where there's an adversarial process where the prosecution gets to present its evidence, but the defense has a chance to review the evidence and to present its rebuttal, then you can't complain that a Harvard law professor is going to serve on the defense, as defense counsel for one of the worst accused sexual offenders in the country. That's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute at Chef Leopard. Also, you can subscribe to me on Minds.com at Chef Leopard. and also on Gab at Starscream85. You can also see this is something I have. Subscribe Star, they've officially approved my account. If you want to contribute, I'll probably be talking a little bit more about it, but you can find me, Chef Leopard, on Subscribe Star. Anything we'll do, maybe we'll start introducing a new program where I'll let you do requests and things like that. That's about it. I'll talk to you guys later. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll probably be in touch throughout the day.